One scientist is planning just such a fishing trip. At this outdoor lab near Austin, Texas, hopes are hanging on a little robot.
This is designed for exploration in unknown territory, completely unknown territory, and the search for biological life.
It's a deep phreatic thermal explorer, or DEPTH-X for short. Its proving ground right now is a local quarry. And there are big plans for its future.
If everything went according to plan, you would launch around 2016. It would be at Europa by 2018, and by 2019, for certain, we know whether there's life off Earth. That's the game.
DEPTH-X is the brainchild of engineer Bill Stone. He and a team of scientists have staked their reputations on it. They've spent 6 years developing the concept and building the prototype. It's part of an ambitious project that would see it carried into space, sent through 6 miles of ice, and into Europa's ocean.
To divide it down into all the various vehicles, you have a parent vehicle which takes you to orbit around the moon Europa. There will be a lander. It'll land on the ice. Then there's a second stage of the lander which melts its way through 3 to 5 kilometers of ice cap, and then at that point you kick out the third stage. We need a fast-moving device that would be sort of torpedo-shaped, most likely nuclear-propelled, and that would drive for thousands of kilometers around the central ocean of Europa.
Is that really feasible? NASA thinks so. The space agency is on board with money and its blessing, an investment in the search for life. If life exists on Jupiter's moon Europa, could it walk, talk, or fly?
It would be little viruses or, maybe at best bacteria. We would expect only to see primitive life forms, but they might be similar to things that we see on the Earth, but we just don't know.
Scientists are encouraged by the discovery of strange and hardy life forms found in the most inhospitable places on Earth. Tube worms, for example, survive and thrive in total darkness. Extreme pressure isn't a problem. The creatures were discovered in 1977, several miles below the surface of the Galapagos Rift. They exist in water near superheated thermal vents. It's believed that these very conditions, darkness, high pressure, and hydrothermal vents, are present on Europa.
You could have hydrothermal vents kicking up warmth and nutrients down nearer to the core of Europa, and that organisms would have fed off of that material just like they might have in the early Earth.
And while tube worms might not be lurking beneath Europa's icy shell, something else could be.
Its microbial life is the bulk of life on Earth. We expect that branches of that type of life will exist on Europa, just simply because water is the key feature.
Finding it consumes scientist Bill Stone. His DEPTH-X may answer a question that excites seekers of knowledge.
Can we have the robot behavior look for signs of life and then try to collect a sample based on what it's sensing?
Stone's baby is in its infancy. At the same time, it is futuristic and advanced. It's a high-tech toy like no other that might show our world what another is all about. first contact with extraterrestrial life may be on Jupiter's moon, Europa. The DepthX robot, or more accurately, Hydrobot, is being designed to ultimately think, move, and explore without help from man.
And that is all to be done by the robot itself. We're not going to be guiding it to do that. That's going to be a big step forward in what we would call robot science autonomy.
It's a real-life HAL, the star of a new space odyssey.
Where it's literally hit a button and let it dive below the surface, and we won't see it again until it tells us what's down there.
DepthX will be able to extract and analyze samples on its own as it navigates the ocean.
This little tube you see down here will pull in water samples and store them in 1-liter bags. We have 5 of them on board. But before it does that, it actually powers through a series of micro pumps over here on the left and brings it into an onboard microscope. And that microscope will take images of what's in the water down to about 5 microns. So we can see most of the typical types of microbial life from 5 to 200 microns on screen. The robot will use that to discriminate, to determine if there's life, and then grab a sample.
DepthX and its systems must be made smaller to work in space. And it still must pass trials under ice flows.
We are testing this in Antarctica to make sure it all works totally under ice.
The question of life on Europa is probably the big unknown, because that would change our whole view of the universe, basically. I mean, if this little moon sitting out there in this hostile environment of Jupiter can have life form on it, that means that probably tells us that life is almost everywhere.
The science is there. I mean, I think searching for life is one of the most compelling things that we can do as not only as scientists, but as a race, as human beings.
It's a giant leap, and not just for mankind.
No, for robot kind.
Of all Jupiter's imposing features, none is more impressive than the one you cannot see. It's bigger by far than the Great Red Spot, more dynamic than the bands of jet streams, and as lethal as any killer known to man.
You have one of the most powerful radiation environments in the solar system, aside from the sun.
The magnetic field of Jupiter is the largest entity, I believe, in the solar system.
It is a bubble 450 million miles long, buzzing with electrically charged particles. It's Jupiter's magnetosphere.
The sun's sitting here putting out the solar wind. And the solar wind is charged particles of protons and electrons.
These particles